Welcome to Rhythm of Previews, where we check out the preview chapters of The Rhythm of War, the fourth Stormlight Archive novel. I am Danielle with the 17th Shard.
And hi, I'm Marvin.
Hi. As always, there will be Rhythm of War spoilers from here on out. Maybe some other greater Cosmere references as well. What annotations has Brandon gifted us with today?
Well, yeah, so chapter 11, as we know, was the first Venli chapter in Rhythm of War, and Brandon actually called it like it's the first proper chapter of Rhythm of War now, and the ones we got before were sort of this climax for a hypothetical novel we got beforehand. And Brandon actually noted that the Venli chapters were only second only to the Shallan chapters in the amount of revision he had to do on them, because he wanted to get the tone right, and sort of he said that Venli does not see herself as a hero as much as the other people or the other characters maybe do at this point, because I mean they're in a special position, and that instead Venli's character is supposed to be more of a normal person being trapped in a strange situation, like we got for the other characters at the beginning of their stories more, or didn't even get so much for some of them. Like Shallan always was in a special place, or like in a special, she always was a light eyes, and so she wasn't always a normal person, things like that. And he stressed how emotionally Venli is not really about swearing ideals, and she feels like she's just the wrong person to be in that position that she's in. She thinks somebody else might be better suited, and I feel that sort of fits, because we know that Eshonai technically was sought out by Temba, so she feels like she isn't really the right person to be a Radiant, I guess. And he also noted that some people might not like her chapters because of that, because she won't be as proactive as the other characters, and Brandon thinks, or he was willing to take that risk because he thinks it made her viewpoint just much more authentic and realistic in a way, because not every character is somebody who wants to do stuff and be the hero of their own story and things like that. And Venli is really sort of the archetype for that in the Stormlight Archive for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see her evolution as a Radiant. It's gonna, if he's saying that now, and her chapter was pretty interesting, then I feel like the build up to when she finally does, speak oaths, if she does, which I would hope so. I think that will be really fun to see.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon also mentioned that the why he had to do the revisions to her plotline will become more apparent in the future chapters. Mm-hmm. So I feel it's just like he did something there that maybe Venli just doesn't take as much of an active role, but we know that she probably will interact with some of the other characters, so it's probably more she takes the role of the reader in a way, maybe even a little, so she's more external to them and sort of sees what they are doing, but doesn't directly interact with them maybe. So that is definitely going to be interesting to see how it evolves.
I'm very curious to see how he's going to handle the flashbacks, which we haven't seen any yet. I mean, we know that this book was supposed to be an Eshonai book, and I was like, how are we going to do that if she's gone? And a lot of people have that question. They're like, isn't this going to be a Venli book? So I wonder if these revisions might have something to do with that.
Probably,
kind
and like
integrating her story as well.
Brandon actually pointed out that in like one of the updates that the flashbacks will be begin in part 3. So we'll first of all have some time until we get there. But also I feel like that just shows that definitely something is going on with Venli's viewpoint maybe at that point, and that he did, or that it will change over the course of the book, or will become apparent why he had to do these revisions. Yeah.
Well, let's get into this chapter. We can get into this epigraph for this chapter. Navani again, the Artifabrians, to share their techniques rather than keeping everything super closely guarded. Like they're using decoys, plated metals, and things to kind of obfuscate the cage. And then she's saying that if they share that information, it will enrich the lives of everybody. It won't keep everybody, behind, and it will help society in the long run.
Yeah, I feel like in the epigraph, it really comes through that Navani is really quite salty that the Artifabrians are keeping their secrets that close and are not willing to share in a time of war, because like, well, if not this time, when else would they do that? Because it would just help their war effort to not keep the secrets and share them instead. And it really comes through in this epigraph that Navani is not okay with that.
It also shows that Navani is thinking ahead as far as, using technology for the war and the battles and things. So she's pleading with the Artifabrians and all of these scientists to share, because they need to get ahead and they need to use these new Fabrial to help with society in general and with the war efforts and everything, basically. That's her plan, her master plan.
Yeah. And I feel like in the epigraph, also from a mechanical point of view, we just get information, I guess, that fake metals or like decoys and plated metals do not interfere with the Fabrial. So I guess that's good to know that you can sort of just make it look nice, I guess, and still have it work. So it
seems like a lot of these Fabrial are jewelry pieces as well, So maybe they're using that as a way to justify faking people out with what kind of metals are being used. They're like, okay, well, this lady wants a gold one, so we'll just plate the iron wires with gold or something,
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot in that one, but it kind of wraps up her little message to the Artifabrians.
Or maybe she's just getting started and like, and this is what we could have done already, and this is what we could have done.
All right. Well, chapter 12, A Way to Help. So the group arrives back at readthrough, and Kaladin really wants to be alone. He goes back to his rooms. In the midst of his agony, he hears an insistent knock on his door, and it's Adolin. He's there to help Kaladin from being alone with his thoughts. He brings him to a tavern. A wedding celebration for Jor the bouncer is going on, and they meet Vale there. They discuss Iali. Radiant shows up as kind of like as a friend to talk to Kaladin about Shallan, like kind of raising her concerns about Shallan. And then when Adolin returns to the table, they go through a little period of trying to set Kaladin up with some of the women because of his breakup with Lynn. And then Vale leaves to do some gambling and some drinking. Typical Vale. And Kaladin tells Adolin that he was forced to retire. Adolin tries to work through it with Kaladin. He says, my father's not always right, So he's trying to be a good friend to Kaladin without pitying him. And then Rock shows up. He's inviting Kaladin to the Horneater Peaks with him. And Kaladin's tempted, but he just doesn't want to seem like he's childish, running from his problems. So he ultimately, wishes them well. And doesn't reveal that he was forced to retire to Rock. He wants Rock to have this good opinion of him before he leaves. So it was a pretty rough, really emotional chapter. Even the last Kaladin scene that we saw, where he was actually forced to retire to, turn in his badge and his gun kind of thing. This was worse for me. This one was really tough to read.
Definitely, yeah. But despite being really like hard hitting and sort of a downer this chapter in a way for Kaladin, I feel like it's just a really great, or one of my favorite chapters so far in this book, simply because all these previous chapters, I guess the previous Kaladin wasn't quite as action heavy either, but this one really focused on the characters and how their relationships, especially like Shallan, Adolin, and Kaladin's relationship has evolved over the last year, and it's just great to sort of catch up with them again and see that they are really good friends and can talk to each other and support each other. It's really great to see that.
Yeah, it really shows Brandon's strength as a writer when he can write just a group of friends talking and it just be so full and you're just following it, like wanting to read the next sentence and nothing's really happening. They're just drinking together and yet we have so many emotions and so many different scenes, even in this one tavern with like different things that are going on. So, really, really good.
Yeah, but oh god, the beginning of the chapter is just when Kaladin is alone in his quarters then and just has a total breakdown and is hyperventilating and like Syl isn't even around, so he's really alone at this point. And I really like how sort of his quarters are also sort of reflecting his state of mind, because there's not much furniture and it sort of feels like an empty void to him, and that just is like he feels himself when he's alone, and it was just a really powerful scene. Yeah.
They mentioned the agony spren, which I think is a new mention of them, but it reminded me of in the prologue when we saw the anguish spren and when Navani was, mourning. I was like thinking that why are they agony spren and not the anguish spren? But the agony spren sounds more like a physical pain, like he's actually in real pain. Anguish spren is more like a sadness, like a gripping sadness. But he's really, when he's alone, he can let his mask down. He can just kind of wallow in his pain. And then when Adolin shows up, he walks in the door and it mentions that the agony spren are gone, but the exhaustion spren are still there, and Adolin sees the exhaustion spren around him. So he can still hide that pain. He can still kind of compartmentalize it a little bit, but he's just so exhausted. And yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. And I feel like that we only see these agony spren now. Like we've had characters go through so much pain already before this, and this really goes to show that Kaladin is really struggling hard at this point, and we even get to see a new spren sort of just to sort of exemplify his agony. And yeah, it's really hard. And like early in the chapter, he talks about how he doesn't want the other Windrunners to feel bad when he talks about how he feels. And he just makes himself responsible again and again for all the people around him. And he just needs somebody to take care of him, I guess. And we see that in this chapter, and that's really nice to see.
And we see his relationship with the Windrunners. As he's walking through, they're kind of trying to get his attention, maybe go and do something together. And he's like, I can't. So he just puts this fake grin on his face. And it almost, I picture him like a painful, like he has a vein in his forehead or something. Like he's just like, just gotta go. I gotta leave. So he does the nod to his squires and his Windrunners. And then it's interesting because later on when they meet with Shallan, in the chapter, he's almost jealous and like thinking about how lucky Shallan can just make a new face and make a new person and a new personality and become that for a little bit to hide behind that. So it's really sad. He's so lonely, like even amongst all of his friends, he's just alone.
We actually had one genuine moment of happiness for Kaladin in this chapter where like the Bridge 4 is making jokes again, and like I think the newly bonded or like second ideal Radiant, like Kara, makes a joke to Rock, and that actually gets a smile out of Kaladin there, which only lasts for a very short moment. And that I think it's just really nice to see that he can still feel happiness in a way, and it is around when he is around his friends and his sort of crewmates. And they are just sort of his anchor, I guess, and that he can still rely on. He just doesn't want to because he's Kaladin and like has a hard time realizing that. But it's good to know sort of that he has the support behind him that he could fall back on if he ever gets in a really bad state again.
Yeah. And then his Bridge 4, they're all kind of almost all advanced enough to have their own squire. So he's like a dad, and all of his children are growing up, and that's just adding to his loneliness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like basically everyone in Bridge 4 at this point has reached at least the second ideal. So
and then they have David, I think. David, who has that battle shock, I think they called it, and he just can't talk, and he's helping Renar and stuff. So, and Kaladin's equating himself with David, I don't know.
David. and I think Relaine is the other one that, of course, doesn't have his brain yet, which we saw in the previous Kaladin chapter, I think. Yeah. And then there's finally is Rock, who is not a squire, or he doesn't call himself a squire, and he always says he's something else. And of course, at the end of this chapter, we then see that Rock doesn't really, like, he feels an obligation to go back to his people and the Horneater Peaks, and sort of well, at least what he tells Kaladin is that he wants to take responsibility for having taken up a weapon and killing somebody with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then Kaladin thinks to himself, like, I think that their whole way of determining, a position by birth order is kind of silly, but he still respects that, and he still lets him, have his traditions and things.
Yeah.
But speaking of Kaladin's friends, we have Adolin having a nice, good scene here. He's such a sweetheart. I love him so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just lovely to see, like, even just the entrance of Adolin, and we see, like, first thing that Kaladin notes is that he is back, or like, he wears a Colan uniform, but it's actually embroidered, and he sort of enhanced it to look more fashionable. And just for one, it goes to show that Adolin sort of has taken over some of his life again, because in the previous books, he always was sort of like under Dalinar and had to live by the codes. And now he's actually High Prince and not directly under Dalinar, I guess. So he takes more liberties again. And yeah, that's cool to see. And of course, just Adolin in general and Kaladin, like, that's just a perfect bromance, I guess, what they have there. And Kaladin just doesn't want to accept it, but he really should.
Yeah.
Because it's great.
Yeah, their bromance is definitely something that has been a slow burn. But about his clothing, I was wondering if Michael Whalen was given this brief of his clothing for the cover of the book, because if you see on the back of the book, we have Adolin that was confirmed, and he's got all this like embroidery. It almost looks like the Fibonacci like designs and stuff. And I was wondering if maybe that's where he got the decision to make his clothing look like that, which that's a lot of embroidery, but
yeah. But I mean, it's Adolin, so
yes. And yeah, their relationship, Kaladin and Adolin, it did grow over a long time. Kind of like they were kind of a little spiteful of each other, and then grew into respect for each other. And this scene reminded me of the Word of Brandon, that Adolin and Shallan would be really kind of interested in a poly relationship, and they would be open to it. But that Kaladin wouldn't. That would be a little beyond him.
Yeah, and you have to use the poly triangle that we deserve.
Yeah, the poly triangle we deserve. Yeah. I mean, I'm just going with the flow with how the books are going, but it definitely felt like Brandon was really leaning into this idea that they would be into it, but Kaladin's kind of not so okay with it. And then even when Kaladin's thinking about Adolin and how he's got this perfect messy hair and his personality's so easygoing and he always looks so put together and everything. I just thought that was, and it reminded me a lot of when Shallan sees Yasta for the first time, is like girl crushing on her about like her stature and her, you know, assets and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we have once again Shallan, or I guess Whale, being jealous of other women's assets. And, or not, maybe not even jealous, but like just impressed, I guess.
Yeah.
And really come through that, like, Whale also says, like, she doesn't like her girls very smart or something like that. She rather would have them be a little dumb because they're easier to impress that way. And it's really coming through that at least Whale and probably all of Shallan is bi at the very like.
At least curious, or and you know,
exactly.
she's able to appreciate the female form.
Yes.
Yeah,
so.
I really liked that little, like we had hints of it, and we had to get like confirmation from Brandon, like outside of the books, but he's really like writing this into the book now. Like, it's pretty obvious. This is where like how he was writing Shallan, and then also with Adolin and Kaladin. I mean, I don't think he'll ever actually go through with the triangle.
No,
but
I feel like
it's fun for the shippers.
I feel like this chapter shows that Kaladin and Shallan wouldn't have worked out as well, because like Adolin is really, he also says that he wants to make have her feel better, and he notices that she isn't fine, although she always says it, and he says that Kaladin is exactly the same. And that's just, if Shallan and Kaladin would have gotten together, I feel it would have just been a downward spiral, because they just have fueled each other's issues. Yeah,
Kaladin just needs to find his Adolin. Poor guy.
Does. He really does.
But yeah, I mean, I really liked this scene because Shallan and Kaladin have a moment together where they're talking without Adolin present, and Radiant comes out, you know, with the blonde hair, and she shows up and she's talking to Kaladin like a friend on behalf of Shallan, like explaining to Kaladin what Shallan is going through. So they've definitely over the year developed their friendship to discussing, you know, their mental health and things that they're dealing with and stuff. And so I thought that was really nice to see where they're at right now as opposed to a year ago.
Yeah, and also we have that one little like just tidbit where the waitress wants to give Kaladin stronger alcohol or something with alcohol at all, and like Whale stands up for him and sort of says, no, the man said he doesn't want any orange. He just wants orange wine and not the stronger stuff.
Orange juice. In my head, it's just orange juice.
It probably is, like some weird Rashan fruit that basically is an orange. And that just really goes to show that, because Ken thinks to himself that when he drinks alcohol, he gets in a worse state and sort of just wallows in his pity a lot more, and like it's not great for him when he drinks alcohol, and so he'd rather not. And Shallan or Whale knows this, and so goes ahead and says, no, please don't give him anything to drink.
I really hope that their relationship and their trust in each other is going to be used for a good thing in the plot, rather than something that might end up being tainted or taken advantage of or something, because that would just stress me out so much. Because like if something happens where it breaks the trust between them and they know so much about each other, that would break my heart.
No, that's not sure what.
And it's really showing like he needs someone to lean on, and he can't because of his pride. And it's showing that Shallan has Adolin to lean on. She can trust Adolin to take Vale and Radiant out drinking and while she rests, you know. And so it's kind of showing Kaladin what he could have with a friend or a partner or something. So it's so sad.
Yeah. And I mean, we do see that like Syl is really concerned for him because she's actually the one who goes to find Adolin and take him to Kaladin and sort of, I don't think Adolin needed much convincing that he should go to Kaladin, but at least like Syl went to him. And I feel like Pattern and Syl sort of take a similar role there in a way. I guess Syl at least outwards cares a lot more because she's able to express that, while Pattern is more, he always has to put it into logical terms, I guess. But we also have like Pattern talking here about how he wants to seek out the Ardents maybe because they are the ones who take care of the mentally ill people in the Roshan society, and he also is concerned for Shallan's mental health. And I think that's just good to see that the Spren want to take care of the humans, and it's not just like the other way around.
Yeah, it's a true friendship rather than just a partnership. Like, they really care about their radiance. And Pattern really didn't have a lot to say in this, but he had some really cute little parts, like when they're talking about where do babies come from? and they're like, oh, Pattern, just ask Shallan where they come from. And he's like, oh, well, she'll just change colors like a sunset or like an infected wound of her blush, which I thought that was really cute. Like, he always has something witty and funny to say without knowing that he's being funny.
Definitely, yeah.
And then when they were trying to hook up Kaladin with the girls, and Adolin and Shallan were going off of each other, and well, not Shallan, I guess it was Vale who was doing it, but Vale was like, oh, check out the legs on that one or whatever. And they're talking about how they're tall.
Yeah. I feel like at least Ren sort of wanted to channel that, like there's that stereotype, or I guess joke, just that all tall people know each other and must like each other. And I feel like Ren is quite tall. I think he's like 6'3" or something like that. Yeah, he's really tall. So, and I think he just wanted to put that in there because Kaladin, of course, is freakishly tall, and he can probably relate to that in some way. That like people always want to. Just because you're tall, you have to have something to talk about. It's just a little fun.
I don't know. I wouldn't know what the tall people talk about. I assume the weather or something because, you know,
we talk about all the secret stuff that you can't see.
Yeah, I'm like super short. So. Yeah, that was a really funny one. And then when they were talking and Vale's checking out this girl's like chest, and she's like, oh, she's definitely wearing some padding. And Adolin's like, no. And then she was like, oh, you dated her, didn't you? And he's like, I'm not going there. It was so good. It felt like this whole conversation felt so natural. I felt like I was sitting there at the table with them.
Definitely. Yeah.
It was really good.
What I actually found interesting about that, like when she notices that that woman is well endowed, that we know that when Shallan created the Radiant personality, she actually did sort of boost her own chest a little bit, and it's sort of, and she could do that at any point technically as Vale too, and it's just fun to note, I guess, that like she's jealous of that in a way, although she could always just sort of conjure up these like
well, I think it fits because it's really Vale who's saying these things, and Vale can't really control her look. But we do know, actually, from this chapter, that Shallan still can adjust what they look like. So she gave radiant blonde hair so that people would be able to tell who she is at that moment. And so Shallan could change them, but she's just giving Vale this personality of being like, man, I'd have to eat 6 chulls to get to that size or whatever. So it's more like Vale's just making a comment about it just to cheer Kaladin up, not that she's actually wanting to look like that. True,
yeah. And I feel like Vale is she's just such a different character from Shallan, and it's really good for them as a or the three as a person, I guess, to sort of have these different people. And it's also, I guess it's kind of great and not so great for Adolin to be married to such a woman, because like he has a drinking buddy in her and also has his loving wife, sort of in the same person, I guess.
But I think for their friendship with Kaladin as well, I think Vale is also used to kind of put Kaladin at ease, where he feels like he can just hang out with them, and that she's not just like, a woman or something. She's just a buddy of theirs that they can drink with. So, and then when Radiant shows up, they have a different kind of relationship, because Radiant's telling Kaladin about Eli, and that it was a murder and it wasn't a suicide, and that it's someone that's close to them. And so then the tone changes and it becomes more serious. So I think Vale is there to lighten up their relationship, and then Radiant is there as a friend to kind of bring things more serious.
Yeah. I guess sort of just Radiant has a stronger sense of duty, and sort of, I guess it's just more honorable in a way than both Radiant and Shallan. So that of course fits with Kaladin's whole personality, who's all about, like he even says he wants to follow Dalinar, or the strict interpretation of the codes, as long as Dalinar does. And yeah, it's just, he's a prude.
Yeah. And Adolin has his version of the codes, and he, at the beginning of the books, he's like kind of annoyed with them, and he follows them because his dad is telling him to, but he doesn't really like it. But now he has his own way. He still wears the uniform, but he does his own little, embellishments to it. And then I think that also helps with Kaladin, because Kaladin is almost like a brother to Adolin at this point. And so he's showing him like, my dad's not always right. And that's what he said to him when they talked about him being, relieved of duty. He says, my dad doesn't always make the best decisions. He's not the end all of, decision making. And he's kind of trying to connect with Kaladin over that, rather than, pitying Kaladin or making Kaladin feel like, more sad than he already is.
Although I do have to disagree with Adolin here, because I think what Dalinar decided there was the right decision, because putting him further, or putting Kaladin out on the field again, would not end well. But yeah, I can definitely see that Adolin is just really trying to be supportive here, and Kaladin even noticed it himself, that like he was outsmarted by Adolin there, and he didn't even notice. So yeah, Adolin's just an all-around great person.
Yeah. And then with Kaladin, he even agreed that Dalinar was right. I mean, he does feel like he shouldn't be out there if he freezes and puts his men in danger. So, I mean, at least he's accepting it, and it's really rough for him, but he understands why. But it's still like, he that's not going to change his whole personality, and the fact that he's suffering from depression.
Like, another thing I noticed with Adolin here, and like which you also already sort of hinted at, is that he is much more outgoing in a way, or like he's a leader of the people, I guess, because he is, first of all, the tavern that they're in is not one of the more upper class ones, but instead like, I guess, a normal one that Dark Eyes go to as well. And so he really goes to length to show that he cares about his people and talks to all of them. Like, he even knows the bartender, sorry, not the bartender, but the bouncer is what Chor is. And so, yeah, I feel that just fits with him also saying, when like Kaladin says he should have finally bonded his friend and should finally dismiss his blade, because that makes it easier for to find a bond of his own. And then he vehemently says, no, he will not get rid of Maya, and he will take care of her. And I feel like that's just very, very strongly hinting at him going through with reviving her and really achieving that goal at the end. Because like these the edge dancers really were the order that went among the people and took care of them, and that really just fits with Adolin's personality so much, and this chapter just solidifies that for me.
Yeah, I thought it was a little weird because they're talking about Maya, and Kaladin was there and saw Maya in Shadesmar, and I don't understand why he doesn't really appreciate her significance to Adolin. And like, it's been a year, doesn't he know that they have some kind of a connection there? And not only that, Adolin can summon her faster than 10 heartbeats and can communicate with her. Like, why isn't he more interested in him reviving Maya? It seems this part just seemed a little strange to me. I feel like maybe Adolin might want to have been truthful with Kaladin about Maya.
Yeah, either that, or maybe he just has stagnated with like because if nothing more than like summoning her faster happened in this 1 year, maybe Kaladin just thinks, okay, you did your best, you gave it a try, but it doesn't really work. So please just dismiss it and bond a real sprint, I guess is maybe what might have happened. But yeah, can only guess at this point, because I do feel that Adolin wouldn't keep that a secret from Kaladin or Shallan, because like they were there in Shadesmar when they bonded more, and it would be weird for them not to share that information, because it might also be like maybe they haven't realized it yet, but it is probably the key to reviving Spren in general, or like Dead Eyes. So that's information that better be shared.
I mean, I've always been an advocate for a normie Adolin, and he definitely has something going on with Maya. So I do understand that, but I really don't want him to just like give up on that and just bond a Spren, which I say that like just bond a Spren, but you know, we see so many people doing that now. Adolin is special in some kind of way. I don't know. I really like Adolin. I love reading about him and stuff. And
I feel like maybe we don't know what reviving a Spren is really like, and maybe it does change them substantially, and it wouldn't be a normal Radiant sort of or search binder that Adolin becomes. So I feel like maybe he doesn't even achieve fully reviving Maya, and instead it just sort of shows the way for others to do it, and might also be a solution to it. Because I do think, or I agree that Adolin really is sort of the normie in the group thus far, and he really fits that role as well, because he doesn't like he has points where he feels like he's not worthless, but of less worth than the others, because he doesn't have magical abilities. But then he pulls out, we can go to my, I don't know, tailor in Colina and seek shelter there. So he's resourceful in other ways, and
and he's kind of accepted it too, because I know at first he was like kind of fighting with the idea like all my friends are Radiants and I'm not, but he's kind of just accepted it. Even his brother is Radiant and he's not, and he's supportive of that. That's just Adolin. That's just his personality. He supports his friends, and his brother.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes an edge dancer, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. So
if he does something new, maybe.
Yeah, everything that Adolin does is just great. So, and
I love that he's on the cover, because that means that he's important to me. And then after they do all of this heckling and stuff of Kaladin with setting them up after he broke up with Lynn and stuff, when Adolin leaves, Radiant shows up and they have this conversation about Shallan. And then is it that Vale leaves and then he and Adolin are talking, or was that before?
Oh, it was then, I think. Like Adolin came back and what was it? I can't remember. It's been 3 hours since I read this.
I know. We're just going out of order on our notes.
Yeah.
But Rock shows up at the table, and Kaladin's like, oh, not right now. I can't deal with it right now. And I'm like, what is he What does he complain about?
Yeah.
Apparently, Rock wants him to go with him to the Horneater Peaks, and he extends this invitation to Kaladin, and he doesn't realize at this moment that Kaladin is dismissed. So Kaladin's like, I can't run away. I can't go with you. I have to stay here and, stick with Dalinar.
Yeah, and Kaladin also thinks about how he isn't really behind Rock's decision to go back to the peaks, and sort of feels like he would just be a hindrance to him and make him feel bad, I guess, about leaving them behind again and going back to his people. So yeah, it's just all around a better decision for Kaladin, or in his eyes, to stay there. And I guess just from a plot point of view, he sort of has to stay there because we do know that Brandon has planned that Horneater novella that might have been actually the one we got for In Between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, but is now probably going to be the one between Rhythm of War and Book 5. So I guess this is just set up for that. So we'll see what exactly will happen at the Horneater Peaks. And I guess Rock won't have as much of a role, if any at all, in this book. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they say in the end of the chapter that Rock is leaving forever, and they have a really touching goodbye where Rock is teasing him a little bit. He's like, "Oh, you airsick lowlander," and then right after he does that, he gives him a very unique bow, I guess, some kind of really significant bow. And he hugs him, and when he pulls away, he's crying, and he's like, "Thank you," and he's thanking him for saving his life at Bridge 4 and everything. So he's definitely, I'm pretty sure he's definitely gone for this book. But he did say that Cord and Gift, his children, are going to remain. So we'll probably still get some of that Horneater culture still through Cord and possibly through Gift.
Yeah, and like he talks about how Gift will probably fight if it's necessary, and how that's his own decision. So Rock, like, while he at least outwardly feels like he has this duty and to his tradition of his people and has to go back, he doesn't want to impose it on his children. And we already saw, like, in Oathbringer, we know that I think Gift is a Warren, or is like Warren, and Cord might be as well, or something else. She might follow the passions or something like that. So he really wants to sort of let his children live their own lives. And that's
and he even acknowledged that Cord finds the traditions to be kind of silly, and he's okay with that. He lets Cord, make her own decisions about things. So that's sad that he's going to be leaving, because he was such a fan favorite.
Yeah.
But I think that this last little scene with him was really nice at closure for their kind of relationship, where he's thanking Kaladin, and Kaladin is, so sad and stuff already. And now he has to deal with, his friend leaving, but seems like he's acknowledging it and allowing it to not take over.
Yeah. And I mean, at least we are probably going to get a whole novella that's focused on Rock. So that's a good consolation.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But actually, something I want to say just about Rock, because in his chapter in Oathbringer, like when we get all these Bridge 4 chapters, he actually talks about how he's lying to the rest of Bridge 4 and not telling them the whole truth about like what that means, that he now is the birth order has changed again. So I've wondered just how much he told them after, or in this intervening year, and how maybe like even Kaladin here at the end, how much of the truth he told him there, because I think Rock might even qualify as like the firstborn at this point, because like we don't exactly know what happened to his brothers or other brothers, but we do know that he moved up one spot at least. So maybe he's just hiding stuff from them, and maybe he's sort of becoming the clan leader or something like that back in the Horneater Peaks now, because he is the firstborn now. So that'll be interesting to see, I feel.
Yeah. And it is implied in this chapter that Kaladin was thinking, like, is he going to his death? Because Rock is talking about how he has to go and accept justice for what he's done and stuff. And Kaladin almost seems like he's like, is he just turning himself in just like that? And I don't get it, And that's when he's thinking, like, this birth order thing is really dumb. But I just have to let him do his thing. These are his traditions and his beliefs. So that was chapter 12. That was a way to help, which we as readers can see a way to help. Paladin is being stubborn and doesn't want to accept any help.
Yeah.
So you can find all of these preview chapters at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. They're on Tor.com. And we'll let you know on 17thshard.com right at 9 Eastern when they come out. And you can discuss them on our Discord. You can discuss them on our forums, in the comments. Please talk to us. Bye.
See you next week.